Today I'd like to talk to you guys about the evolution of the Taurus litigation and the drop fire defect litigation that we pursued, and what we learned about how these unintended discharges were happening. So if you think about a striker-fired gun, and when I say striker-fired gun, the component parts that make the gun go bang are inside the gun. You don't have an external hammer on the gun. So the striker or the firing pin is completely inside the gun. It's hidden, and it is driven by springs that are connected to the trigger in the most basic sense. So if it's connected to the trigger, it's very important for the trigger not to move unless the trigger's pulled by somebody. I think we can all agree, I hope that everybody can agree, a gun shouldn't fire. It should not go bang unless you pull the trigger. And any time it goes bang without a trigger pull, in my opinion, that's called an unintended discharge. The gun shouldn't do that. Well, in a striker-fired gun, if you are going to connect the part that makes the gun go bang to the trigger, then it's important that the trigger not move if, for example, the gun is dropped and there are forces inside that gun. And I don't want to get into a physics lesson here, but if you drop a gun like this and it hits the ground on the rear of the slide, the trigger here wants to keep moving. Okay, gravity wants to pull the trigger backwards when the gun hits the ground. Well, that's bad. That's not good in a striker-fired gun, because if the trigger moves out of position, when the trigger starts moving, all the internal components start moving. So if the trigger keeps moving to the rear when the gun hits the ground, it's like a trigger pull. It literally looks like somebody is pulling the trigger and the gun will fire. So when people ask, well, how did y'all get these cases on these unintended discharges when it comes to drop fires? People drop things that you hold in your hand. You drop your car keys, you drop your cell phone, you drop the remote control. Stop a police officer and say, hey, have you ever dropped your pistol? And he's going to say, oh yeah. I mean, you talking about today or this week or this month? It just happens. We're human. Anything that is handheld eventually is going to be dropped unintentionally. People don't mean to do it. It just happens. So it's foreseeable. From an engineering standpoint, if I'm going to make a pistol, I have to think, well, people are going to carry a pistol in their hands, and it's probably going to get dropped. So I have to make it safe, where if it is dropped, it's not going to fire without a trigger pull. So we think and we believe and we contend that the way to make a pistol safe is put some type trigger safety on it. Now, what's a trigger safety? A trigger safety is a device or a mechanism that prevents the trigger from moving out of position unless the trigger is actually pulled by your finger. Okay? Now, people go, oh my gosh, how can you put a trigger safety in a pistol? It's got to be difficult. Well, no, it's not really that difficult. There's been a patent on a trigger safety for over 100 years. Ivor Johnson, who was one of the really smart guy who made guns in the late 19th century and the late 1800s, he actually patented a trigger safety for a handgun in the 1890s. So that concept and that thought process about how can we make handguns safer has been around for a very, very long time. And the fact that certain manufacturers are still refusing to do that, I think it is very irresponsible on their part, because the technology's been around for over 100 years. The component parts are, when it comes to the total cost of making a pistol, very, very cheap to add to the design, and they make the weapon safer for the end user. Okay, for the person who gets it, who buys it to protect their family, who buys it to protect themselves if they're traveling for work, if they're traveling anywhere. You know, I fully believe that everyone has a right to keep and bear arms and to defend yourself. But I want, in our law firm, we want to make sure that if you buy a handgun, that it is safe, that the safety devices on that firearm are actually going to work and prevents an unintended discharge from happening. Let's say you open your truck door or your car door and you're getting out of the car and you accidentally drop the gun and it hits the concrete in your garage. We want to make sure it doesn't fire because nobody's pulling the trigger. Hey, this is Todd Wheeles with the Morris Haynes Law Firm. If you like this video, I'd appreciate if you like it, if you'd share it. Go to our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our YouTube page, like the video, share it. And if you have any questions or would like to contact us, visit our website. It's www.mhhlaw.net. My email address is on there, twheeles, TWHEELES @mhhlaw.net, or you can give me a call at my office, 205-324-4008. Love to talk to you about any problems you may be having with firearms.